than your currency. Splurging millions, buying houses like Monopoly. Fucking 9 to 5, man, the money is a joke to me. Buying cryptocurrency, my money in the privacy. I make it rain dollars, they watch me disappear.
Hey guys and girls, welcome to this week's episode of the No BS with Birchy podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Birch. This is the show unraveling the truth to the facade of the 21st century. We're now exiting the matrix and waking up to motherfucking reality. And we better wake up to motherfucking reality before we waste 40 years of our life working a job we don't like, being enslaved in the system, to get a couple of years before we get our bodies fail and get achy and all that sort of stuff once we hit 65 and you're allowed to retire, right? Oh, thank you so much. You're allowing me to retire. Today, I want to talk about Superfund. I want to talk about how it's a big, fat scam for everybody and what sort of things you should be doing in your life to retire early. The reality of it is that everyone has 24 hours in a day, 365 days in the year, and it's what you fill your days with which determines the outcomes of where you're going to get to in life and all that sort of stuff. But reality of it is that a lot of people go to school, they get a job, they get told, you got a 12-year indoctrination camp, and then you go and do your Pledge of Allegiance to another 4 years of study just so you can get a piece of paper, get yourself in a lot of debt, so then you can allow to go and get a job, but you can't even afford to buy a fucking lettuce, right? A fucking lettuce. Come on, right? They said, people can't afford a house because you've got too much avocado on toast. They're using that as their excuse for inflation and all that sort of stuff. But now you can't even get fucking lettuce. So you can't have avocado on toast. You can't have a lettuce by itself. What can you have to eat anymore? We're being robbed. That's what we're being robbed by. And looking at it, a lot of people, get caught up into that theory that, okay, I'll go and work for the age of 20 to 60. By the time I hit 60, I can, have enough in my super, retire, spend the old days driving around in a caravan around the country and traveling overseas, and hopefully I don't have to eat dog food at any point throughout my retirement, which, people do, I guess. People don't joke about it if people don't be doing it, right? So looking at it, imagine working your whole life, and I apologize if you're 60 or 70 or 50 heading towards 60 and listening to this, and I mean it, like, there's ways that you can help improve your position now still, but like imagine going to retirement and thinking, I'm going to fucking travel around in a caravan. You get told you can't travel in a caravan because it costs too much to buy the caravan, and the petrol bill will sink you in your retirement. You'll be able to drive 20 kilometers a week with your petrol allowance that you've allowed for yourself. That's because, they haven't told you about inflation. A lot of you guys today watching this are only realizing what inflation is today for the first time in your life. You may not have ever thought about inflation, right? But that's the hidden tax, right? That's the hidden thing that they never tell you about. That's why you become wealthy because your asset rises in value. It's not because your asset got any better. It's not because anything changed. It's because the money was devalued and the asset got inflated away. So looking at super funds out there's a big issue, in the markets right now. And I've got a couple of articles here just to share with you on it as well. But besides the super fund, let's look at why the scam is so big and rampant to start off with. So going back in 1992, Australia forced everyone into a super fund. Back before that, you had... there was no 401k for those of you that are listening over in the US, whatever country in pension plan, whatever you want to call it. There wasn't these things before the 1990s. And my only understanding or thought process behind it is that why is your super fund full of derivatives, dog shit sort of products and whatever, is because they've created a whole new market here. So when the stock market crashed in the late 80s, early 90s, how do they revive the markets? How do they create a new Ponzi scheme on top of everything? Well, first, they created inflation. So you had to have two incomes in the family, in the household, to go and earn an income and survive instead of one. So two incomes. Then they added a bit of inflation by giving everyone a 9% pay rise, but they said you can't touch your pay. You have to save that into the super fund. And when you're 60, you get access to that money and you can go and enjoy your life. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that sounds great. But what they've done in the process of doing this is that they've created a new market, right? They've created liquidity for the companies out there for the stock market. They've created liquidity from the bond markets, and they've found a sucker, which is the end user, so they can commoditize it. So looking at if there was only private investors investing into it, like someone said to me, Nathan, what's B.Invested worth? I wouldn't even fucking be able to tell you what my business is worth because I don't have investors buying shares of my company. But if there was a market that was created around the side of B.Invested and we floated B.Invested and everyone's buying shares at $1, $5, $10, whatever they think the share price is worth, well, then that market would set the value of my other 99% of the shares that I own, and that would create a market. So what they've done by creating this supermarket, like the super fund market, is by giving liquidity to the stocks, the bonds, and all those other bullshit sort of derivatives. They've been able to commoditize and use that injection of liquidity and tie everybody's vested interest into that market. And if you try to not participate in it, then you are heavily penalised. If you take your money out of super early, you get fines, penalties, whatever. Have you set up a self-managed super fund? Just think about this, right? If you have set up a self-managed super fund, you'll see what I'm about to talk about. If you haven't set up a self-managed super fund and you do think about setting up a self-managed super fund, well, then you would experience this, right? And just by the record, just me saying a few things there, I just want to give a little shout out to all of our friends that, in the government that are watching this, just so they've got some little disclaimers on this to keep them all happy, because we probably have the regulatory bodies listening and going, I'll try and trap Nathan on a word that he said here. None of this is financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor. None of it is to substitute as financial advice. Everybody's position is different, and you should go and get specialised financial advice around your position. But I want to put a disclaimer on top of my disclaimer and say I don't fucking like financial advisors. I only trust on less than a handful of financial advisors that I've come across over the years that are worth any money, right? Financial advisors, you go to them, they try and sell you shares, they try and sell you managed funds, they try and sell you a product, they sell you insurance. As a kid growing up, my mum said, don't trust a real estate agent, a used car salesperson, or an insurance salesperson. Reality of it is for you to be able to sell insurance, you have to be a financial advisor. So the only way you can sell insurance is by being a financial advisor, right? So just understand that they're there to sell you products, right? You go to become a doctor, you're allowed to sell products inside of this. They're generally tablets. It's not selling you nutrition, not telling you to stop on the grog, not telling you to stop eating, not telling you to add some extra fruit and vegetable and nutritional advice. It's all about here, buy this tablet, here, take this tablet, here, take this, have this procedure, whatever it may be. When you look at the financial services industry, you go to the university, they sell, this is what you can sell inside this box. You talk outside of that box, you'll go to jail, right? Literally, basically what it is. So the financial planners are out there to try and sell you these dog shit wrapped in cat shit style products. If you've seen The Big Short, you'll understand what I'm referring to there. And if you haven't seen The Big Short, I'd probably suggest that you do see The Big Short to understand what I'm talking about there, because they talk about derivatives and all different sorts of financial instruments that you may not know about today. But looking at this, people that have set up a self-managed super fund, when you, let's say you've got, this is an important thing, right? I always ask people, how much money do you have in a super? And they go, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you that. Well, it's your super. You should know, right? It's your money, right? And I say, well, who's your super fund with? They go, I'll have to check and come back to you. So you've got all this money that you don't know how much exactly. You've got, with who fucking knows where your super fund is. And the next question I ask is, what's it invested into? They go, I think it might be into shares, or it might be into some managed fund or whatever. It's like the low risk one. It's like, well, it's all a fucking risk by being in a super fund, right? It's a big casino there that they, we've all seen, Wolf of Wall Street. It's like Wolf of Wall Street, those people dealing with your super. And reality of it is that a lot of people do have 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, 400 grand, 500 grand inside their super, but they don't know what it's invested into, what the person on the other end of it's doing with it, etc. But when people do go and set up a self-managed super fund, they will generally, as a process would be that you go and set up the super fund, then you do a thing called a rollover, where you're rolling over the funds into, from, let's say you've got 100 grand in your super and it rolls into that. They write you a check, they send it to you. Basically, when you go and ask for that rollover to take your money out of the super fund, it's like going to an insolvent person or a bankrupt person asking for your money back. It's like, oh, but, there's that next thing, delay after delay after delay. And it's like, it's meant to be my money, is it not? Right? But why is it so hard? Because they're not liquid. They've got their funds invested in these things. They have to sell off back into the market, part of the Ponzi scheme that they've got. And it's very complex sort of way to get your capital back out of there, but it is for a lot of people worth it. But as I said, like, I'm not a financial planner, so I can't give you that advice, and you need to get the right advice. And if you do need help, you can certainly reach out to my office, and I can give you the right pointers and the right people to be able to discuss that and have those discussions. But on this front, I want to talk about the scary thing in the market at the moment. And, we talked about why it's a Ponzi scheme, but like the very important thing right now. So I spoke to some people. I remember about a year ago, some of my investors were rolling over their super funds, and they said, I've got X amount of money in here, whatever. And I remember people sending me the unit cost, right? And it was like, I asked everyone, what was your super fund worth, the units? So it's based on how many units you own. A unit might be worth $1 or something. It's like a little share of it. And they were worth like 97 cents before the February. They went down in February 2020. They went down to 70 cents or 80 cents, and then at the time of like a year later, they'd gone back up to $1, whatever the case might be. But what I realized is that yes, the super fund went down, and then it went back up. It was it's just a blip on the radar. But the problem is when it went back up, inflation, right? $1 million or $500,000 before start of 2020 would have bought you a lot more shit than what $1 million would or $500,000 would today. So even though it looks like it hasn't crashed, against inflation, your capital has been severely haircut from that. So the question I ask for everybody is, a lot of people actually before start of 2020 had sort of, been a bit concerned and started researching and sort of made a few adjustments to their superannuation fund to be able to, not be severely impacted when the market did crash, and they did all right from that. But a lot of people didn't as well. So be prepared, right? If you think there's going to be a crash, what could you do about protecting your super fund? If you've got 100 grand, 200 grand, 300 grand, 500 grand, what sort of things can you do to protect yourself? It's a question I'd be asking myself right now as of June 2022. But here we go, looking at just some news articles. I've got two of them here. Super fund performance from Super Guide. This is on May 18th. It was actually my birthday that day. But it was just random. I saw it there. It's like, yeah. Super fund performance, monthly returns to April 22. Reading time, 2 minutes. Extreme market volatility has caught up with super funds in April, with the median growth of 61% to 80% in growth assets, falling 1.2%, cancelling out gains made within the previous months. This ongoing tug of war of financial markets is set to continue, with the share markets down in May to date and only 6 weeks remaining. Chan West estimates financial year return will be marginal loss of 0.5%. So it's saying that the annual loss for the financial year of 2021 to 2022 was negative 0.5%, right? So if you had 100 grand in your super fund at the start of 2021's financial year and to 2022's end in 2022, you would have had $90,500 in your super fund. So explain to me what else has gone down over that period. Nothing, right? Your food's gone up, your petrol's gone up, your car's gone up, your house has gone up, everything's gone up. But you've entrusted whoever your super fund is to invest in whatever they choose to in their big Ponzi scheme. And the super fund is performing at a negative 0.05. Goes on to say, despite the current market uncertainty, Chant West Senior Research Manager Meng, whatever his name is, urges fund members to maintain a long-term perspective. What? How much is really going to be able to be purchased from my super fund when I retire? Even if growth funds do finish the year in negative territory, that would only be the 5th time in 30 years since the introduction of compulsory super in 1992. There we go. Since the compulsory introduction of super in 1992. Whatever the result this year's will come back of the 18% return in financial 21, which was the second best in the history of the compulsory super. Oh, I wonder why, because they just printed so much money. Even taking into consideration the losses in May to date, the median growth of the fund is still up more than 10% since the pre-corona high at the January 2020. So when we lay all these numbers, I'd like to see it on a chart, right? But we go and see that the market is still up 10% since the pre-corona high at the end of January 2020. So it means over 2 years, they're saying here will come back of the 18% return for that financial year. But that 18% return was just based on the fact that it lost 20% the year beforehand, right? But it says here the market is good, that the market and the fund is still up 10% since pre-corona. So 2 years, it's up 10% in the biggest inflationary territory of history, right, of Australia. Is your super fund performing the way that it should be? Over the past decade, the fund has grown 8.4% on year average. Well, that's because that, they've had all the inflation that they've been printing off and cheap credit and a zero interest rate policy environment. When interest rates are going up, liquidity is getting squeezed, we're getting negative rates here. Here's another one, which is just a very short, basic one here. Super returns fall into the red for 2022. This is off a thing called Nest Egg. Super returns fall. Estimated the medium growth fund is negative 0.5% this financial year. The firm found that the medium growth fund had returned 1.2% up until the end of April, but poor share performance this month has pushed returns into negative for the full financial year. If returns remain in the red at the end of financial year, it'll be the fifth, basically the same thing. So when we look at, what have we got here? Australian shares fared much better. The appreciation of the Australian dollar provided some cushioning, reducing the unhedged loss to 3.2%. Australian shares fared much better, falling just 0.8%. Bonds continue to suffer as yields rose again, with Australian and international bonds losing 1.5% and 2.9% respectively over the month. So the international bonds lost 1.5% in the month, 2.9% per month. There we go, right? Super funds are in the red, right? My question being is, what do you know about your super fund, right? How is it performing? Who is it with? How much money did you have last year? How much money do you have this year? A lot of people go, oh, my super fund's gone up. Well, your boss is putting 10% of your salary into it each year, and that's growing for you. It shouldn't be just the same as what it was last year. Otherwise, that what they're putting in there is just being washed away and going poof back to money heaven because the market's pushing down on that. So have a very good scope of what's happening with your super. Who is it with? Who's in charge of my money? What is that going to look like in my retirement? Can I do something better with it? How can I protect myself in case there is a next crash, which we're obviously seeing a crash right now. They're all very important questions to be asking. If you need help on sort of working out a plan for your super fund, reach out to my team. As I said, none of this is financial advice. I throw those funny disclaimers in there, but reality is it's important that you speak to someone that understands super, understands, each and everyone's position differently, and put together a solid plan for you. I don't trust many financial planners out there just because they're trying to sell you bonds and shares and manage funds and insurances and all that sort of stuff. It's important to get tailored advice based on your position and the right advice. If you need help on that front, you can reach out to my team. They can put you in contact with a financial planner that I trust. If you need help with that, you can call us 1300 367 925 on Apple Play, Google Play, Spotify, and Facebook Live at facebook.com/binvested.com.au. On that note, guys, make sure that you do take care of your super. You can do different things in there. A lot of people think that it has to be stuck in a share market. You can pull it out. You can start a self-managed super fund. You can go and buy properties. You can do lots of things, but you need to have the right advice and the right advisors on that front. So reach out to my team, point in the right direction. Have a great day. Bye for now.
Like Bilal said, man, we're stuck in the matrix. This my advice, don't care if you take it. The dollar about to die, soon to be hyperinflated. This my 2 cents, don't care if you save it. Joint be decentralized and you will see you've been lied to the whole time, and it's the irony, cause they do the exact opposite. You become a slave to the system, enough your money, all they do is profit. There's no conspiracy theory, you better hear me. Crypto will set you free before the system does. I don't care if you do or you don't, but what I'm saying is the truth to the reason you choke. I've never been a failure, excuse my behavior. Keep talking, haters doing me a favor. They all telling lies, I know what they been telling you. I'm the opposite of Donald Trump of Australia. It's amazing, there for the taking. My time is never wasted, just getting wasted. These girls say I'm really breathtaking. I can't help it if I really misbehaving.